Generations, a show for seniors, people who know seniors, or people who someday are going to become seniors. I'm David Lapaco. I'll be your host and moderator for this episode of Generations, but we have a whole group of co-hosts today, and we're dealing with the subject of writing as the theme of our program, because writing is something that, especially in advancing age, is a nice way to kind of look at your life, look at things that matter to you. It can be very therapeutic to do writing, and you don't have to be an award-winning writer to write things that are meaningful to you and potentially to other people as well. And so I'll introduce our co-hosts for the day, and then we're going to go back to each one. Our special surprise is that each one of our co-hosts is going to read something brief that they have written, and we can talk about their writing. And then we're going to talk more generally about writing as something that seniors can do. And so for our co-hosts, first of all, we have Mike Rosberg with us. And Mike, tell us a little bit about the kind of writing you do, and we'll hear your actual writing later.
Well, one of the things I've been doing the most is journaling throughout all the many years. And in 2022, I finally decided to try to write 500 aphorisms and observations. So I'll be reading a couple of those.
All right, super. Second, we have Nadia Giordana, who's here. And I know, like Mike, she has been a pretty productive writer over the years. Tell us a little bit about some of the things you have written.
Yeah, this will be a fun one. I tend to write predominantly poetry, and that's usually free verse. I have been branching out recently into short stories.
Okay. And then we have Rashida Jenkins, who's here. And Rashida, tell us a little bit about what sorts of things you write, and then we'll get back to you in a bit and hear something that you've actually written.
Yes, thank you, David. I was raised by a writer, so it's kind of in my blood. I do some journaling. I also write curriculum, and I'm working on a novel.
Wow. Well, let's hear about that a little bit later. I'm curious about that. And finally, last but certainly not least, we have Candy Pettiford. Candy, what kind of things do you write? And what's your background with respect to writing?
It's almost like, what don't I write? I used to do more shows, and so I would write my own shows. I was a flight attendant for Northwest Airline years ago, so I do a show called Oh Stewardess, Oh Stewardess. And so I do all kinds of shows, but I've got at least 11 books under my belt. And I will read from my new poetry book that's not done yet, but I will read something from that. So I'm excited about this, David.
Plenty to look forward to. Well, let's hear what you have written. Mike, why don't you start and talk about your aphorisms and some of the things you have made observations about, because I know observational writing is really a big part of what you do. So share with us some of the stuff you've written.
Well, thank you, Dave. In 2022, in retirement, when I didn't have a lot of other things going on, like having to work 40 hours a week or something like that, I set the goal of writing 500 different aphorisms and observations. And if I could just read a few, and we'll see what anybody thinks. You know you're getting old when it's as hard to relate to teenagers as it was to relate to old people when you were a teenager. And this kind of reminds me of my 15-year-old grandnephew. And I would never know what to say to him exactly, and would not want to sit down and start talking to him as if I were a 15-year-old myself when I used to talk about 15-year-old things. So that's one. With the passing of time, the future is often set aside so you can visit the past. Now, that's something I'm really finding that's happening to me, that I always, growing up, would look to the future and can we get to Mars by 2035 and you know, this and that and the other thing. But now I just find myself looking backward at studying some of the things. I watch all sorts of World War II videos on television, and am watching old TV shows like Armis Brooks. And I even bought a DVD of Ma and Pa Kettle, if anybody remembers that. Okay, let's see.
You're dating yourself, Mike.
I sure am. The successful elderly are those who reduce the difficulty of their goals, but remain pleased when they achieve them. What I mean by that is in about 1970 in the McAllister College Gymnasium, where Dave might even have been there once, a couple of times I ran a mile in under 6 minutes. Last winter, my goal that I just missed by that much a couple of times was to run a mile in 15 minutes. And I would have felt just as good running the mile in 15 as I did in 6 way back when. So it's just, you know, the goal is the best you can do, whatever your age may be, I guess. And that's equally gratifying. And well, let me find one more here. As a generation passes away, so do its causes and crazes. One thinks of, you know, what occurs to me in this regard is the whole hippie love generation movement and how common that was, and how, you know, we thought we could bring a whole change to the world and everybody would, you know, love each other and be peaceful and sharing. And it just kind of never turned out that way. And, you know, the people that have long hair now are football players more than students, it seems to me. So, you know, time goes on and things change. So
pretty clearly you're interested in the grand sweep of time in various ways. Do any of our co-hosts have any reaction to what Mike talked about?
I related most, and I think it was extremely wise. The second to the last, the one about setting your goals and being just as happy. I think that's very important.
A lot of the literature on goal setting says to keep your goals realistic so that you don't feel like you're a failure. And so you make reachable goals where they may be a bit of a stretch for you, but you can still make them. The other thing, talking about dealing with a teenager at our age. One of the things I think every senior citizen has to figure out is a way to make that bridge. And often it's just trying to get into their world a little bit. I know that our grandson, who's now 9 years old, he plays Minecraft among many other video games. And my wife actually learned Minecraft, and she astounds any 9-year-old that she runs into now, because you play Minecraft, you know how to do that. And so I think you have to kind of reach out and get into their world a little bit. Even with Taylor Swift, I realized with all the news that she was making last year, I didn't know a single Taylor Swift song. So I finally did some checking. I thought, Anti-Hero, I like that song. You Belong With Me, I like that song. I now know it, I can sing it. But it was just a way of connecting with people in terms of where they're at.
Yes, I want to speak to that, you know, times have changed, but our needs haven't. And so we can identify with each other through age because of the needs that we have. We all want to be loved. We all want to be seen. We all need to eat, right? We all need security and safety. And it's just how we do that as the ages change. So we still can relate.
Yeah. Well, why don't we or Candy, one more thing to say?
Yeah, I thought about the teenager thing. I agree with that, because in my day, they used to say things like cool, groovy, you know, and kids don't say cool or groovy now. You've got a whole different language, so you got to catch up to them.
It's not cool and groovy to say that.
No, yeah, you're right.
Those were once sick things to say, but they're not sick anymore. So, Nadia, what do you have to offer us out of your voluminous writing? What are you going to read for us?
I have been writing a lot since childhood, but after the age of 40, it really took off. So I'll start today by reading. It's a poem, but it's a prose poem, which is basically a little, in this case, a little essay in a poem, and not so much free verse, but definitely not rhymed. It's titled 1,000 of Me. Someone once said, everyone we meet forms an image of us, each one different. So that means there are at least 1,000 other me's out in the world doing who knows what, leaving impressions unintended, warming hearts I barely knew needed comforting, inspiring people I hardly noticed, hurting some out of ignorance, but not ill intent, making enemies with poorly chosen words and thoughtless actions. I should not be surprised. Most of these impressions I created deliberately, one at a time, each as I felt I needed to be perceived, depending on the circumstances and my level of social anxiety. Playing a role helped with that. It creates a comfort zone within which I can function. It's not dishonest. It's a genuine part of me. Except I'm never present as a whole person. I wouldn't fit. I wouldn't be able to manage all of me at once. So I come out in wedges, pieces of the pie. So the next time someone says, that's not the Nadia I know, I can smile and recognize I'm a prisoner of perception and roll with it. That's
Wow.
Nadia.
I'd like to know what Chuck thinks about that. Which one does he see every day?
Yeah, all the game playing, which we're way past after 30 some odd years.
Oh yeah.
But it's fun to write poetry, and I do like to have a little bit of wisdom encompassed in amongst what I write, something that I can remember and maybe the grandkids will read someday.
Yeah. Well, I was prepared to give a polite, oh, that's very nice, because I had heard it before, but that was really good.
It was.
Fresh and I think right on in terms of what life is like and with how people are perceived and how we are perceived. I mean, that's a really good poem. Dang.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Reactions?
I have to agree with you, David. That was amazing. Just to put in perspective how we show up in different spaces and different times and different places, how we're feeling that day, our mood. Maybe we had breakfast, maybe we didn't, maybe we got gas, and we just show up in a different way, and different people see us differently. Thank you for that. That was awesome.
Yeah, we interact with so many different things, and no matter who we are, we react a little differently to everyone because each situation is different. So are we.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Nadia.
I do have one quick thing to add, which ties off of Mr. Rosberg's aphorisms and also people writing in their older age, is that there are small press magazines out there all around the country that are eager for emerging and growing writers to send things. And of course, I do happen to edit one of those such magazines. And the reason I show this one is Mr. Rosberg's aphorisms have graced the pages of the last 2 or 3 issues, I think. So that's just something that I wanted to add. There are places, if one wants to, as a senior, to write, to actually get your work published.
Congratulations.
If all else fails, you can self-publish. And that's a very feasible thing to do these days as well, because there are a lot of places that for a small, relatively modest fee will print and distribute what you've written. So, well, why don't we move on to Rashida Jenkins, batting third today. What do you have to offer us from your writing vault?
Yes, well, I'm proud to say that I'm writing curriculum. One of them is called Growth Without Guilt. And it is a workshop for women to speak to them being a born overcomer. And I'm going to read a piece from that. So imagine, if you will, a seed traveling many miles through darkness, peril, many obstacles, opposition with no refuge, and little guidance. Yet it knows its destination. Not only is this seed faced with insurmountable odds, it also is in competition with over 3 million other seeds to reach this exact same destination. Never stopping, no detours, no rest. The seed, it finally makes contact first, and life begins. You are that seed. You made it. You are a born overcomer. You were created on purpose with a purpose, and it's time to live out that purpose.
Wow.
Do you know what I was referring to?
Yeah, yeah,
Lots of wisdom in there.
Wow.
yeah.
Thank you.
And
Can you
take it
guess
from
what
a
I'm referring
seed.
to?
No, go ahead, tell us.
Can you guess what I'm referring to?
Tell us.
A seed and an egg.
I thought that.
Yeah.
Sperm and an egg in a woman.
Oh,
You are a born overcomer because out of 300 million seeds,
yes.
you made it first.
Wow.
That actually,
Fantastic.
Wow.
that is a kind of thought that I've been having lately, that what the odds are of
Yes.
our individual self-awareness occurring in the universe are almost infinitesimally small, because it's one person has to meet another person, and then one egg cell has to meet a sperm cell, and they have to unite to form us.
Yes.
Had that, things that could go a zillion different ways than they have. And that
Yeah.
was a
I
remarkable,
like that.
eloquent way of putting it, Rashida.
Yeah. And what makes that work is you have a metaphor that's really down to earth and enables us to focus on this in a way that we can really relate to. So that was nice.
Thank you.
Anything
Well
else?
done.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, the pressure is on, Candy Pettiford. You're our fourth writer. What do you have to offer us? You have a tough axe to follow, but let's see what
Oh,
you
yeah, really? Well, this one will, Nadia will kind of like it, but it rhymes. My poem rhymes, Nadia. And it's from my second poetry book that one day I will get published. And everyone will identify with this poem. It's called Phones. Living in a land full of phones, when it rings, you're still alone. Talking on the phone when you go to the store. Talking so much you forgot what you came for. Talking on the phone in your car. Yak, yak, yak. Oops. Drove too far. So many phones had to change area codes. Cellular, internet, the system's in overload. If you left it at home, wouldn't be an alert. It's gotten so out of hand now it's ringing in church. I see your ear. It looks all red. Oh, the phone. Why, it's glued to your head. Your children won't leave you alone. Johnny, can't you see that I'm on the phone? Mama, you must like the phone better than me. Don't cry, Johnny. In an hour or two, I'll be off. See? Whatever did we do before? Walk, talk, drove, ate, and a whole lot more. It could have become banned or even against the law. With phones outlawed in cars, now who are you gonna call? That man looking down at that text while crossing the street. If you're not careful, may not see the people you're going to meet. Our phones are the new state of the art. Look out. You may be called dumb and the phone called smart. We better start working on some kind of solution. The way it looks, phones have become a real pollution.
That's good.
That's excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
That is the kind of rhyming and humor that really works. I could see that being read on television.
Yeah. Like you mean right now, you mean?
Right.
Yeah, well, I guess it is now, isn't it?
But phones, I mean, we have noticed, my husband and I, we're saying, look at this guy. He's got his head is down and he's walking across the street. Wake up. Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah, I hadn't quite appreciated how much phones dominate our life until I heard you read that, because it really is the case, and it just hit me big time how that is a change from how things used to be. So
I didn't say anything about the families that are sitting around together, 4 or 5 of them, and every one of them are on their phone. No one is talking to each other. I've seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a rule.
That's really bad.
We have a rule at our house: no phones at the dinner table.
Yeah,
Good rule.
Very good.
Yep.
Good rule.
Yeah, that's coming on. I think that's an important rule.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I think they are going to ban the phones, though. I almost think they're going to ban them in the cars. We've seen more people acting like they're drunk, and we turn. Yeah, they're on their phone.
Well, I think this was a very impressive display. Where do we want to go from here? What
You,
brought
David?
what?
What do you have?
We want to hear from you.
Oh, well, okay. We don't have too much time. I didn't know what to pick. I picked something I thought was appropriate for this program, the nature of this program. I used to write poetry a long time ago, but I haven't done that in decades. But I do write a lot of like letters to the editor and brief essays. And so one I pulled out from last year, after Joe Biden announced that he was running for re-election, I thought it was an opportune time to talk about aging, since that's where he's at 81 years old. So here's the letter that the Star Tribune published back in 23 when the day after he announced his candidacy. In the last half century, we've had to look at our attitudes and behavior toward people based on their gender, their race, their sexual orientation, their physical appearance, and a host of other things. And we are better for it. Now I believe we have an opportunity to look long and hard at our attitudes toward people who are older. Old isn't automatically bad. Far from it. Indeed, if I were advising the Biden team, I would make the 2024 election a sort of tipping point where we finally come to terms with age and declare that we are not going to judge or stereotype people based on how many times Earth has circled the sun in their lifetimes. That is ageism, plain and simple. It's time to embrace age as involving a vast array of valuable life experiences that lead to depth and wisdom. Other societies revere the elderly, but we have to apologize for being old. It's time for that to stop. Joe Biden or any other candidate for president does not have to compete in a decathlon or challenge others to arm wrestle. What that candidate must do is demonstrate a perspective and expertise on issues that is born out of extensive experiences, grounded in real-world challenges, and then work on them with a steady hand and a wise heart. Rather than apologizing for his age, Mr. Biden should exploit it and make us all rethink our rather sad and ignorant stereotypes about getting older. We should be ashamed if all we care about are optics or unwarranted prejudices and fears. Once it was time for gay pride, now it's time for gray pride.
Oh,
That's good.
Yay.
that was a
Great
terrific
pride.
letter.
Yeah,
So I think we are at a point where age is becoming much more of a focal point in our public.
Yes.
Things. Mike, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to comment that it's particularly of interest at this election because I believe the two candidates, likely candidates, are the two oldest people ever to have run for president.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you can do the job, it doesn't matter how old you are.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of appalling how many people just automatically want to dismiss either or both candidates because of their age.
That's right.
I think we've got to get past that. I think that's very unfortunate because we lose something by ignoring people who have that amount of experience. So,
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I saw when Obama was running, they actually, Obama and Biden, were doing their exercise. And Biden kept up with Obama very well, running around they were running around the Capitol. I thought looked in great shape. So age, you can do a few things with that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, David.
yeah. So getting back to writing, what do we want our viewers to think about with respect to writing? what virtues have you seen in writing for you? How can we influence them to take their writing more seriously and actually do some writing, because I think we find value in it?
Well, one thing that I've thought about is that there will be a time in not too long when I'll be long gone. Nobody will be talking to me because I won't be here, but perhaps a great grandson will come across something I've written in the past and find some wisdom in that and think about me as, great grandfather or something like that. So I think it's good for families to know about their predecessors.
Mm-hmm.
It is, and it doesn't even have to end up because I treasure my grandmother's writing that I've found, the things that she's written, letters, and a couple of little family history pieces, and then just stapled together and tucked in a box that I came across. Those are treasures.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be great literature. It could be a recipe book of family recipes that could be very meaningful to somebody looking at it 20 or 30 years later and thinking back to you and the stuff that you used to make in the kitchen. So it doesn't have to be world earth-shattering kinds of literature or anything like that.
But it's also, like you mentioned in the beginning, David, it's very therapeutic. You've had a stressful day, you sit down, take a moment and just write about it. Sometimes when you have disagreements that you don't necessarily want to talk to the person about, you write it down and just get it off of your chest and write it down somewhere that, you'll keep for yourself. You won't send it. But it's very therapeutic to write.
Yeah. Well, as we wind down to our final minute or so, any last words that you'd like to offer about writing?
Congratulations to Dave for having written a widely used college textbook on argumentation. That's quite
wow.
Yeah. So I'm happy to say it's being used at 20 different colleges or universities. And so it's a kind of legacy for me professionally to do that. At any rate, we all have our writing that we do. We find value in it. We hope our viewers will find value in it. And the clock on the wall is saying it's time for us to mosey for today. But thank you all for your wonderful contributions to this show. Think about writing, everybody. Keep writing. And with that, we'll say see you next time on our next episode on a totally different topic, our next episode of